Okay, once again, if you could just start by pausing and writing down the quotations that I've written there, and I'll explain as I go along. If you leave the same space as I've done, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so it's Act 1, Scene 4. We're moving through the play. This is actually one of my favourite images and one that I feel can be used in any question or any sort of discussion about Macbeth in general and the type of character he is, and this then reflects certain themes that go throughout the play. So we're looking at Act 1, Scene 4, hugely important. We meet King Duncan for the first time in this scene. We see the type of king he is, or at least an introduction to it, and what we look out for then is what Shakespeare wants us to think about him. So in this scene we see Duncan being introduced, and he then celebrates Macbeth. And then we have Macbeth essentially showing his true colours in what is called an aside. So I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. Start off looking at something that Duncan says. He speaks about other people essentially associating goodness, signs of nobleness. So this idea of signs of nobleness like stars. So essentially he's making a connection between nobleness and stars. So you can see there, first of all, with the use of the word like, it's a simile. Not hugely important, to be fair, but it helps us to understand that he's comparing and saying that nobleness is similar to stars, hence the word simile, similar. So Duncan speaks about people who have signs of nobleness like stars. He's therefore associating nobility. Now, nobility is associated with a sense of goodness, a sense of loyalty. And I put down here, if you are a noble person, you would be respected by your peers. So if we know that this goodness, loyalty, and being respected is like stars, we know that essentially there's a very positive image here. So we take stars and we say very positive imagery here. They are themselves symbolic of heaven. I'll give it a capital H there for a place if you want to look at it that way. Symbolic of heaven, and a good word there for goodness is this idea of benevolence. And that's goodness. In fact, I won't even do that. You can look into that word if you don't know it already. I will say mal is bad, bene is good. Mal is bad, so malicious, malignant. Benevolent is good. Something to think about. So Duncan associates nobleness with stars. Really important foundation for what comes next from Macbeth. After he realises that Duncan's son Malcolm, get that silent L in there as well, Duncan's son Malcolm is declared to be the Prince of Cumberland. Now, the Prince of Cumberland was the next person in line to be king. So he is now heir to the throne. And that is a hugely important part of the play. So Malcolm is the Prince of Cumberland. He becomes heir to the throne. Macbeth refers to that as a step. Now, essentially he says, the Prince of Cumberland, that is a step upon which I must fall down or else o'erleap, for in my way it lies. So he knows that Malcolm is now in his way. Macbeth has been told by the witches that he will be king. Macbeth wants to be king, maybe always wanted to be king. And now he realises that there's an obstacle in his way, and it's Malcolm. He is a step, so he is an obstacle in his way. And that's just something to think about when we get to the next section here. All of this, first of all, the Prince of Cumberland, that is a step upon which I must fall down or else o'erleap, and stars hide your fires, is all said in an aside. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Aside literally means to the side. So the rest of the characters don't hear it. It is basically Macbeth's thoughts. Very important. So if you just understand that all of this is said in private, essentially it's Macbeth's mind, it's his thoughts. Look at what he says. Very interesting that after Duncan has made the connection between goodness and stars, or nobleness and stars, Macbeth wants those stars to hide their fires. I like a few things about this. It's not always exactly the same with punctuation, but it's something to look at. Macbeth seems to be hugely emotional at this. Whether it's fear or excitement, can't be sure, but it gives you something to think about and talk about. He says, stars, hide your fires. Let not light see my black and deep desires. So you might have had a bit of a Scottish twang there. Stars, hide your fires. Let not light see my black and deep desires. So here we see Macbeth's passion coming out. I see the passion in the exclamation marks. We've got passion and emotion. He's excited, maybe. Put that with a question mark. Excited at the prospect. He's shocked as well because suddenly he realizes that there's an obstacle in its way, and it's in his way, and it's Malcolm. He wants the stars that we have said up here are symbolic of heaven and goodness and benevolence. He wants those stars to hide their fires. So if we take this idea of stars, as we said up here, as being linked to God, what we can see now is a conflict immediately starting between Macbeth and Duncan. Duncan is talking about nobleness being like stars. Macbeth is talking about stars hiding their fires, so being hidden. We immediately see a sense of conflict. And I'll put that word here, and I'll just, if we take these two arrows, we have conflict between Macbeth and Duncan. I'll put a D there for Duncan and M there for Macbeth. So we have got this conflict being established by Shakespeare. It's not accidental, it's all intentional. He's creating that conflict. So Macbeth in his aside says, stars, hide your fires. So he wants the light to be cut out. He wants no light, for want of a better phrase, and with the space we've got, he doesn't want light. He doesn't want light to shine. He doesn't want light to show what he is doing. Let not light see my black and deep desires. So he wants to hide his thoughts. And you might remember that idea of appearance versus reality. So you see how a lot of these themes keep coming back again and again. So now he wants to hide the fires, hide the light, hide the goodness, hide the truth. Don't let that light, don't let that heavenly light shine down and show everyone my black and deep desires. So here we have this idea of black being associated possibly with black magic. Now, whether that was a term at the time or not, I'm not 100% sure, but it definitely links to that idea of darkness and evil. So he wants this darkness to overcome the brightness and the light. We see here the establishment or the starting of light versus dark. In this play, we have those two powers fighting against each other constantly. The darkness of Macbeth's evil fighting against the light and goodness of King Duncan, but also just this idea of goodness in general. Okay, so my black and deep desires, he wants to hide them, and this is the establishment of light versus dark. Deep desires, they're hidden away. Shakespeare uses a little bit of alliteration in there, quite common throughout the play, especially when he's trying to create that sense of finality, but also a very memorable phrase. So for you, deep desires, 2 words, nice quote. You'll probably remember the word black, nice quote. And again, it could be anything like hide your fires. You don't have to remember every bit of every quote. You have to remember the important bits, and you have to be able to use those. So this is a really good example in Act 1, Scene 4 of how Macbeth, in an aside, shows his true thoughts about how he wants to hide all his evil thoughts from the world, from God. He doesn't want the stars to shine down. But actually, what we're seeing there as well is that idea that in Macbeth, there is this struggle himself between goodness and evil. He himself isn't quite sure, even at this point, what he should do or what he wants to do. Yes, the thought of murder seems to have crossed his mind. It does say murder yet fantastical earlier on, but basically at this point we're seeing that he wants to hide his evil thoughts from the public and from the other characters. Okay, and next it'll be Lady Macbeth in Act 1, Scene 5, and I hope you found that helpful.